Hey everybody, welcome back to That's So Fringy podcast. It's been a minute. My name is Rick.
And I'm Kristin.
And we are going to be talking today a little bit about propaganda. That's right. You may have missed us a little bit. We had some things to attend to, and we didn't really have much to talk about. Sometimes you need to take a break and you need to reset, and that's what we've done. And now we have some things that we want to talk about. So today we thought it would be a good idea to kind of wet your whistle a bit with a topic called propaganda. We know that there's a lot of propaganda out there nowadays, and you may not even recognize propaganda, because it's so subtle and so sly. But we wanted to just kind of go back a little bit and talk about, like, where did it start? How did it begin? What is propaganda, and where did it even come from?
Yeah.
So yeah, how you been? Good?
Been good. I'm ready to get back into it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's time.
We had a good little break there. We had a couple months off, so
yeah. Spring has sprung.
Well, not really. It's not technically spring, but it's sunny, so we'll take it.
Yeah, it's getting there for some of us in the nation, and some of us, it's still pretty cold.
Yeah. Sorry for all you guys that still have snow.
Yeah.
We have sunshine.
We're getting some. Things are starting to bloom over here, so it's good.
Yeah.
But we just wanted to get into a little bit of the understanding of what is propaganda. So in the beginning, it's important to know that, propaganda, the word, really isn't a positive connotation or a negative connotation. Right. It's how it's used nowadays that gives it that negative connotation. But it's really just a propagating of information, right?
Right. So they actually, the start of propaganda was traced back to the Catholic Church around 1622 as part of the Counter-Reformation. So do you want to explain a little bit what that probably looked like?
Well, the Reformation was when you had the Catholic Church back then that had all of the control of, the separation between man and God. There was this mediator that was supposed to be Jesus, but they kind of became that mediator between God and man. Basically set back up a priest class where they were the ones that studied the Bible, and it was in Latin, so nobody could really read it. There was a lot of people that wanted to, obviously, but there was the clergy and the laymen, basically like the priest and the normal people, or the sheep and the wolves, we'll say. And so there's this disconnect between God, and if you don't have the ability to get connected with God, because you can't read the word and you don't understand, and you're just going off of what they're telling you, that was a big part of, in their mind, they were propagating or spreading the word, but they were also controlling that, right? It was very close to the chest, and it wasn't this free press that became later on, which where they started translating the Bible into English and people could read it, and the Reformation really changed a lot of that, making the Bible more accessible and everything. But the propagation or the propaganda was, you have to do it this way. This is the right way to be a Christian. And it started by the Catholic Church as a means to, kind of propagate the faith. That was it was more of a positive, what they saw as a positive thing. And then, fast forward a little bit, it kind of started to turn negative when you start, in America anyway, when you start looking at the war, World War I, World War II, around that time when it kind of started to take a negative turn, because the American people, by and large, didn't want to go to war. Nobody wants their country to go to war and then have draft and all that stuff that was probably very traumatic for them back then. And so they started to use this propagate the faith as propagate the people to believe what we're telling them, believe what we're saying is true, and to not only believe it, but to get on board with it. Yeah.
I mean, they didn't really have any other way of support your troops and all the stuff we have now. Well, that wasn't really a thing back then. It was more of a, let's just tickle their ears with something that they'll believe, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and you want, especially when you start talking about war, you want the people that are on your side, like in America as an example, you want the patriots to be on your side to back the war, or in Germany, they wanted the German people to be on board with the war. So Hitler had people that would put out propaganda to help the people feel secure, help them feel like they were gonna, they were in the fight for the right reasons, and all of those different things. And if you think about the, average person, they don't really know what they want. They just know basically what they're told. And so it's like, why are we going to war? It's like, well, this is why we're going to war. And when you hear that from your world leaders, the ones that are in charge of your government, you tend to believe, what they're telling you. Why would they lie?
Right. And then especially back then, why would they lie? That there was no 24-hour news outlets that were giving you all this information, and you were having to kind of sort it through in your brain. There was one news, there was one time of day it came on. They would sit around a radio at best, and or they would rely on a newspaper or neighbors. And so it was kind of like a big fun game of telephone.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about like how we get our information.
Right.
How does information come to our minds? How do we know everything that we know? I know when I first started going down the kind of conspiracy theory rabbit hole, a lot of times it was who told me that, and then I would work backwards and start to figure out, okay, who told them that? How did they get that information? And a lot of times that's how I just approach trying to dissect everything that's going on around me, is to kind of work the problem backwards. Well, who told that person that, and who told that person that, and where did that originate? And that's really the only way you can start to hopefully get to the truth, because propaganda a lot of times has motives attached to it.
Right. I would say always has motives attached to it.
Yeah.
Here's a quote from, so when things started, like I said, during war times, when things started to get kind of, people were uneasy, I guess you could say. So things started to get a little uncomfortable. There's a quote from a guy named Paul Mazur, and he says, quote, "We must shift America from a needs to a desires culture. People must be trained to desire, to want new things even before the old have been entirely consumed. We must shape a new mentality in America. Man's desire must overshadow his needs." So we had a time back then when needs were a very big thing. We have these needs that we have. Well, at what point did we shift into a desire, and who was it that kind of started that game here in America? There's a book by a gentleman named Edward Bernays, and he's been called the father of propaganda. He's also the nephew of Sigmund Freud. Fun fact, in case people weren't aware. But he's written a couple books. Kind of one of them's called Propaganda, where he's just kind of he was a frightening. The way he thought was dangerous, in my opinion. He had a lot of. He was kind of I don't know what you want to call him. Kind of a sleazeball, I guess.
A bit of a sleazeball.
I'm trying to be nice about it.
Yeah, when people think when a person's mind is constantly thinking about how to pull the wool over other people's eyes for the benefit of the few.
Even to the point where this guy thought if you could get a doctor name attached to you somehow. There's a quote by him that says, "What we're dealing with really is the concept that people will believe me more if you call me doctor," which is frightening, because there's all kinds of things you can get a doctorate in that have nothing to do with anything.
And it's so true, though, because that's kind of how the medical system has been built, right,
Right.
and we're going to do an episode on the medical system here pretty soon.
Yeah.
And in pharmacies and insurance and all of those different interesting topics. But, but that's kind of how it's built, right? You go to the doctor, and for some reason we think that doctor is working independently, like he's an independent contractor and he doesn't work for you. No, he works for you. He's there to help you, or he or she, sorry, I don't mean to be sexist. He or she is there to help you with whatever ailments you have. And they're supposed to be telling you the truth. But as you'll see in our other episode, they're not always telling you the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. So here we've got another quote from this Edward Bernays, where he says, "The major influence on me was my participation in the first state propaganda agency." That was what it was first called, was the State Propaganda Agency. So it was Woodrow Wilson's Committee on Public Information. That was the technical term of what it was called. And if you think about it, well, here, let me finish this. It says, so Woodrow Wilson's Committee on Public Information, it was established in order to try to drive a basically pacifist population. So that was the desire. And if you think about it in a bigger context, every corporation, every company, everybody that you're going to come into contact with has some kind of public information committee, or they have a PR person, a public relations person. They have somebody that deals with, what do we tell the public?
Yeah.
And it's almost always boils down to, we're either going to not tell them the truth, we're going to tell them slight truth, we're going to tell them blatant falsehoods, like whatever it is that's going to propagate their agenda is what they're going to tell you. So a PR person is really like who is the best liar kind of a deal. That's essentially what
Chief
a PR
liar.
Chief liar, exactly.
Yeah, it's wild to think about that. You have to have that, right? I mean, the whole secrecy of, what do they call it? National security. We've talked about that many times in the
To
past.
put up the national security flag. Can't talk about that. National security.
We need to get little popsicle stick things that you just hold
a
up.
sign to hold up.
Can't talk about that. That's national
Every time
security.
you say something that's weird, I'll just put it over your mouth.
There you go.
Like, "Burp, national security."
But that's what they do, right? They decide that there is something, whatever that thing is, that the public doesn't need to know.
Right.
You're on a need to know basis.
So there was a term that was coined by him that was called engineering consent. So instead of it being that you're just giving consent because it's the right thing to do, or it's what you feel is correct, they're going to manufacture or engineer consent from you, regardless of how you actually feel about it. And they're gonna word it in a way that's like, it's for your own good. You know, how many times have you heard it's for your own good to do it this way? And another person that this Bernays, what's that?
Safe and effective?
Safe and effective. Yeah, totally fine.
Okay.
No side effects. So another person that this Bernays worked really closely with, which should perk your ears up a little bit, is a gentleman named Lippman from 20th Century Fox. So what would a propaganda guy have to do with 20th Century Fox? Well, they were the number one outlet to get movies, news, all of that stuff back then was kind of filtered through Hollywood.
Yeah.
Weird. So he believed that the public should not be a participant in democracy, rather a spectator, which kind of goes against everything that we've been taught about our Constitution, meaning we should be actively involved in it. This guy came in and said, whoa, wait a minute. We want them to be spectators. We don't actually want them to be participants. And he essentially divided up the classes and said, okay, you guys over here, you're the sheep, and you guys over here are what he called the intelligent minority. So the minority of people was a small select group of people that had all of the intelligence, and the rest of you, no, you guys are just supposed to be spectators.
Yeah, and that's really how you can kind of corral the power, right? And the money and the influence and all those things is if you dumb down the population, the mass everyday, G.I. Joe and Jane, there is no reason for them to have this uprising or be mad about anything. All that their design makes us do or want to do is buy things.
Right.
And eat things.
Right. And to that point, his first achievement as this new public relations officer was essentially encouraging women to begin smoking, because back then women didn't smoke. And so it got to the point where it was like, women smoke because it'll help you stay skinny. Women smoke because it'll give you energy, and blah, 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 and all this stuff that they're talking about, when essentially it boiled down to the fact that the tobacco company went to this Bernays guy and said, hey, we're not really like making a ton of profit here, so what can we do? And he goes, well, you're only advertising to men, because men are the only ones that smoke in this day and age. So why don't we, guess what? You can increase your percentage by 50% if you just open up the rest of the population. And for that matter, women's liberation was never about liberating women. It was about taxing the other 50% of the population.
Yep.
They went, oh, wait a second, we're only getting taxes from the men. Well, if we encourage the women to start working too, then we can tax the entire population. Fun fact there. So yeah, his first achievement was essentially telling women, go out there and smoke, because the men are doing it. And I mean, so far as that they were having like models on Fifth Avenue coming down, and halfway through their runway, they're stopping and lighting a cigarette.
I thought those were called prostitutes.
I think that's maybe the modern day term.
But that's what a mind like his does. Is this is our problem. We're not making enough money. We want to make more money. We're greedy. And his mind will make a way. And we could all do it, right? It's not hard to think like a terrorist and figure out how to create a terror campaign. It's not hard to do that. The only thing that makes it hard is the fact that we don't want to do that.
Right.
But you can think about how to be a serial killer, or how to be a terrorist, or how to pull the wool over people's eyes and lie to them and manipulate them. And how do we think that the people will react if we tell them this or if we do that? I mean, we have a whole, and nothing against these people, but it's like a whole industry called marketing where everybody is trying to figure out how, and they take classes in college on it and everything, to figure out how to market to people better so that we can sell more products. Because, if the people don't see it in front of them all the time, they don't have it. Like if you think about food commercials and stuff like that, if you don't have that food cycling in front of your face all the time, talking about food, having it in front of you, seeing it on billboards and all kinds of different things, those are all like very well thought out ad campaigns. The reason that it pops up on YouTube or on your computer, or
the reason people pay so much money for an ad during the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
For Subway. It's because they know that one of the biggest food days of the year is Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, these people must like food. We're going to push all the food stuff.
It's all about
and the Bud Light and all that other stuff. How
many eyes is this going to pass in front of? What's the demographic? How many eyes? How can we manipulate? And it goes way back. There's so many more examples.
Yeah, and here's a quote from that book, Propaganda. It says, quote, "A presidential candidate may be drafted in response to overwhelmingly popular demand, but it is well known that his name will be decided upon by half a dozen men sitting around a table in a hotel room." Now that should frighten people. That should scare people.
Well, and we know it's true. I mean, if there's cheating in elections, which, it is obvious, whether you like the candidates or not, whether you think that it was fair or unfair,
and it's been happening forever.
There's been documented, proven cheating, probably on both sides.
Yep.
And in the way that you have to win those campaigns, or even get a seat at the table to become the president. I mean, the amount of money that you have to have in order to do that, and the amount of contributions that are coming in from lobbyists, that's a whole nother propaganda arm, right? You've got these lobbyists that come in and say, hey, if you support this bill, we'll give you X amount of money for your campaign,
The air quotes, campaign.
Yeah. Ooh, for my campaign. But, that's all propaganda too, because the system is created in such a way, as Kristin was saying earlier, to keep those top level players informed. And, they're not smarter than us.
Right.
They just know more than us. It's about the information.
And it's about being part of that minority, that intelligent minority. If you're not part of that intelligent minority, then it really doesn't matter, because even if you think your voice is going to be heard and you're voicing something that matters, it doesn't. It really doesn't.
Yeah.
If you think that they're going to, try to propagate women smoking because they can make more profit, what makes you think that they're not going to try to propagate other things that are nefarious? Here's a couple companies that this gentleman used to work with and work for: Procter & Gamble, American Tobacco Company, Cartier, Best Foods, CBS, United Fruit Company, General Electric, Dodge Motors, and then the Public Health Service. So the Public Health Service, that one kind of makes more sense now that we've been through something like 2020. We've been through something like the pandemic that we had to go through. It makes a lot more sense that a gentleman like this is working with a company that basically has everything to do with public health.
Yeah,
Public health service.
They have their tentacles in everything.
Yep.
If you think about it, everything nowadays they are trying to sell to you. They're trying to sell you everything on social media, on TV, on the internet, like we talked about before, like billboards. It's like we're constantly getting barraged with information of what we could possibly buy and want and desire.
Well, and even back when this guy was doing his dirty work, so there was this whole campaign that came out that said, okay, and you guys have probably, I mean, it even carries on today in some ways, but you've probably heard this or heard it when you were younger, that the most important meal of the day is breakfast, right? Everybody's heard that. The most important meal of the day is breakfast. So this is traced back to this Bernays guy who essentially goes to a group of doctors, gets them to testify that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. He pays them to testify that this is the most important meal of the day. You should have a good hearty breakfast with something like bacon or ham and eggs and toast, and have a good hearty breakfast, right? Well, behind the scenes, what people didn't know is he was approached by the pork industry, and they said, we're not really making as much money as we'd like to make, so what can we do about that? And he says, I know what we can do. We can get these doctors to go in and say, you got to have bacon for breakfast. Because back then, people didn't really have breakfast. And if they did, it was usually like hot mush or oatmeal or grits or something like that was like left. They made it like once a week, and it was just like leftover. They might have a couple bites to fill their tummy. But breakfast was not really that big of a thing back then. So he goes in and says, you got to have these big hearty breakfasts. And what people didn't know is the reason he did that was because the pork company had approached him and said, we're not selling as much pork as we'd like to. What can we do? And he said, I got an idea. Breakfast. Who better to spread this information than doctors? So that's what he did. And that's how these ad campaigns, that's how, I mean, this obviously happened back in like the 40s, but there's other stuff that's happening now. I mean, look at the whole tech industry. Look at the whole video game industry. There's a reason why young folks are so addicted to video games. And that reason is the propaganda machine. That's what it is. They've realized that there is a certain part of a young man's brain that gets lit up when he's playing video games, this pleasure sensor that gets lit up when he's playing video games. And so guess what they do? That's what they market everything to. It's a tale as old as time, but it's so corrupt when you really think about like how this stuff came to be.
Yeah. And, we haven't even talked about stuff like the news.
Right.
We talked a little bit about media, like Hollywood and stuff like that. But the news is kind of like, how do we get our information about what is going on in the world? Like as an example, I know that Washington, D.C. exists. I've been there. I've actually been there, but you've never been there.
Mm-mm.
So maybe it doesn't exist.
It could just as easily not exist in my mind.
Yeah,
I've never
because
seen it.
you've never actually. Or what about like Cairo or Hawaii or certain places that people have never been? Some African jungle that nobody's ever been to before, or only tribes have been to. There's certain places on the map where you're just like, I mean, I know that it's there because the map says that it's there, but I don't never been there. And so when you start to think like that, you could get a lot of wool pulled over your eyes when it comes to the news, like what's going on in the world right now. Well, I don't know. Like, well, there's a big war going on in Ukraine. Is there? I don't know. I'm not there. I'm not saying it's not happening, but all I'm getting is information from the internet and I would have to literally get on a plane and go over there and check it out myself. Do I know that anything is going on that I see on the news or that I see? We have to at some point just like kind of trust that is what they say it is. And the problem with that, as we're finding out over time, is that they're lying to us,
because of this 24-hour news cycle, they're so worried about getting information out there that they're saying stuff before it's been verified and before it's been confirmed. And they can do that no problem, as long as they write or have a retraction somewhere. Well, that retraction is not front page news. That retraction is going to be a little teeny tiny spot on the very back page that nobody's ever going to read. Right. Nobody cares about retractions. Nobody.
Yeah.
So they can say whatever they want, and then they can come out and be like, oh, sorry, we didn't have all the information we needed then. Whoops, my bad. And it's printed someplace where nobody's even going to pay any attention to it.
Well, and we've talked many times about like their affiliation with the CIA and how they get their news directly from the CIA. And the CIA is a whole other propaganda arm that we could talk about. Like the propaganda is everywhere.
It's in every aspect of your life. It's everywhere. Even your kids, like, good grief. They get up in the morning and they're like, oh gosh, Captain Crunch sounds really good. And you're like, oh, kind of does sound good. Let's have some Captain Crunch. I think let's do some Captain Crunch. You should probably be doing something like oatmeal or something a little bit better, but we're going to do Captain Crunch because my 5-year-old said that Captain Crunch sounded good.
Yeah. And then you buy it because you think that it's food, and then you find out it's not really food. It's just kind of filler. And they have come up with these incredible ad campaigns to sell it to the world, to the masses, and people buy it, they eat it, and they think that they're good. And then they find out later on that they've got a bunch of medical issues.
Right. They've realized that it's not actually food, it's actually chemicals that are harmful to you. And they have made some progress, because there are, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and there are some companies that have stood up to kind of some of this stuff. Like I don't know if you guys remember the Camel cigarettes. They used to have like a camel, like a cartoon looking camel guide, Mr. Cool or something like that. What's his name?
I don't know. It sounds familiar.
So, anyway, I don't remember the name, but it was like this camel that was cartoon that was like all super cool, smoking cigarettes. And, they ended up getting that to where those got taken off. So you can't put like a picture that would entice children on certain things like cigarettes and stuff like that. But, so they do make some progress here and there, but then they come out with something like, I don't know, vapes. Yeah. It's like grape flavored poison. Like, sure. Let's market glycol. So they don't market it to the kids, but good grief, who by and large is going to want to eat grape and strawberry and all this delicious flavored candy? It's usually children.
And now everybody's involved.
And now
everybody.
I mean, there's been times when vaping first started, I would walk through like a big puff of cotton candy, and I was like, "Dang, where do I get one of those cotton candy sticks at?" I mean, they're pretty, like, they're enticing.
Yeah, what they don't tell you is that they do have nicotine, yes, sure, but they also have propylene glycol and all kinds of other chemicals that are terrible for you.
And they have more nicotine than you need. They have more nicotine than a cigarette or a cigar or a pipe, or they have like way more.
Yeah. So this isn't a rant on vapes or bad food or anything like that. It's what we're talking about today is propaganda, and how did we get to where we are? You know, how did we allow ourselves to get this way? And I think it's just been a group of clever people that have decided that, hey, listen, all we have to do is trick these people time and time and time again. And then what happens? The CIA's motto, or any other, motto of the secret services, all of the Mossad and all of them, is basically deny, deny, deny. Or throw shade in some other direction to avert the attention. Like, never admit anything. That's the whole spy way.
Well, and if you've ever dealt with a public relations person of any kind,
oh my gosh,
that's what they do.
Well, it was the CIA that came up with the "we can neither confirm nor deny."
Right.
Like, that was their thing, because they wouldn't answer yes and they wouldn't answer no. We can neither confirm nor deny. Like, so you're going to just lie.
Right.
That's what lying is. Not, you're withholding the truth.
But they make it sound like, okay, we've got this on one side and this on the other side. And if we stand right in between, we're doing the right thing. We're not picking a side. We're going to just be right here in between. But when you want, is this right or is this a wrong answer? You need to pick one. You have to pick one. You can't stand in the middle. And these people have been allowed to just kind of stand in the middle for hundreds of years. Yeah. Here's another fun one. So Dixie cups. This, you guys all know the little paper plastic Dixie cups. So they hire this Bernays character to convince the American people that paper cups were the way to go. They actually, so his idea was, we will market them as if they are more sanitary. So they had, like, it's more sanitary than a cup that you washed, but did you wash it good enough? Yeah. Like, is it actually sanitary?
Are you smart enough to wash a dish?
Right. You don't want to get any germs, so let's just go ahead and promote these Dixie cups. And guess what? It worked.
Yeah.
Dixie cups have been around for how long now? Now they have paper plates. I've got all kinds of stuff. Probably half of our pantry is Dixie. Who knows? Yeah,
and it preys on the laziness of the mind, the sluggardness, as the Bible calls it, of our mind, to where we, we're not verifying. We're not like, is that actually true? Is that actually true? Or is it just, a slogan? Is that just something that they say?
I mean, we have made big changes in our, we don't really eat out of plastic stuff as much as we can avoid it. We switched our plastic, kid stuff and all of our stuff that was plastic to ceramic, to real dishes again. Like, you can do as much as you can do, but it's really hard to not do paper plates when you don't want to do dishes. Yeah. I mean, paper plates, come on.
I mean, it's true, right? Easy. It is easier.
And they're clean. They're clean every time.
They're more sanitary for sure.
Definitely more sanitary. So another fun one was, Procter & Gamble with their Ivory soap. They had a big thing, Ivory soap is not selling as well. We need people to, know Ivory soap is the best. So this Bernays guy goes, well, I know what I can do. I'll go to a group of doctors. I know a guy, and I'll pay them to say that this Ivory soap is superior and is more effective in germ killing.
Oh yeah,
So that's when the antibacterial soaps came out. There's not really, the benefit of hand washing. They taught us this in nursing school. The benefit of hand washing is not the type of soap that you use. It's not the temperature of the water. It's the simple fact that you're rubbing your hands together. You're rubbing your hands together, creating friction. The germs are going to rinse off in the water with the friction of you rubbing your hands together. It doesn't have as much to do with what the actual soap is. Weird. So this guy decides he's going to go to these doctors, and the doctors are going to testify again that Ivory soap, man, it has it's the best at germ killing.
Yeah. It's so crazy. There's so many examples. I mean, we could go on for days talking about all of the propaganda. I mean, we haven't even talked about like the education department and how, Rockefeller came up with the whole education system so that, because he said that we wanted just people that go to work. We just want workers. We don't want thinkers.
We don't want thinkers.
We just want workers.
Yep.
And so why would you teach people how to think and how to, come up with the fact that you are being lied to, like critical thinking, all of these, the way that you get out of this matrix, right, is you have to critically think your way out of it. You have to ask questions, and you have to be curious,
right.
And you can't just be, fat and happy and desiring more, and all you do is go to work and get up and clock in and go to work and do your thing and have your lunch and you get your breaks.
But you start out with your big breakfast.
Yeah. Don't forget your big breakfast.
Swing by Denny's if you want, get a big breakfast.
Yeah. And then you stop by a drive-through and on the way home, you might stop and get a Monster at the gas station. And, it's just like it goes on and on and on. We put all of our money and time and energy and effort into this system that they've created for us. And the more that we can, shed light onto the propaganda, when you see it for what it is, the less you'll want to participate in it.
Right.
The more you'll want to be removed from this matrix and say, okay, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not participating in that anymore. Like Kristin is a rule follower.
She
will follow the rules for no reason. And I'm just like, we don't actually have to do that. And she's like, no, we do.
No, we do. The sign says you must wash your hands for 30 seconds. We will be washing for 30 seconds.
We'll pull up to our church and there's handicap parking spots in the front. And I first started pulling into those handicap parking spots and she was like, you can't do that. You can't do that. And I'm like looking around the parking lot. Like,
it's a completely empty parking lot.
It's like a Monday night and there's like nobody around. I'm like, I think I can, but it's that mentality that a lot of us have, is that we have to follow these rules. Like we go to a doctor's office and we don't think he works for us. We're just listening like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Like people even get the white coat
syndrome.
White coat syndrome that gives them more anxiety because they feel like they're in the presence of an authority. Like, oh my gosh, this doctor is going to tell me that I'm not doing things right. It's like, well, yeah, he may or he may not, but he works for you. Why don't you go in there and say, this is what I want. I want this and I want this and I want this.
Because you can't do that anymore with doctors.
And they won't let you because they've completely, and this is, we're getting a little into the doctor theme. I apologize because we've got a whole other podcast
Rick,
on that.
We're saving that one.
But I mean, it goes with everything. We get this anxiety, right? That we have to follow the rules. We have to, and that was a big thing with the vid. Is everybody was like, whatever was coming out as the rules that we had to follow. You remember the arrows where in the grocery store?
Oh my gosh, yes.
You could only walk one way down the aisle.
And like you better believe Rick was walking the opposite way down every aisle.
Yeah, I was like, it doesn't matter. It's just an arrow on the floor. Like the Germans don't care which direction I'm walking. Like, what are you talking about? But they're like, oh, you got to spread out the people and keep 6 inches. It's like, none of that matters. None of that is real. Right. But
and it's been proven now that it was not real. But everybody listened to Dr. Fauci.
Yeah, I mean, it was this big thing where
if you put a doctor in front of their name, it doesn't matter who it is.
Information from a doctor, and the doctor told everybody what to do. And as a whole nation, everybody was just like, "Yes, master, we will do whatever you tell us." And
That was, you guys have probably heard me talk about this before, but that was my big eye opening actually when I was like, we don't have to follow rules, because I've been to nursing school. I've been in the medical community, and I'm like, this does not make any sense. None of this makes any sense. Why are we doing this? This is silly.
Yeah. I guess we just want to encourage people to
don't hibernate the well people. You quarantine the sick people. You don't quarantine the healthy people.
Yeah. What are we doing?
Because it just makes them sick.
It was backwards, man. It just didn't make any sense. But it was, it was a IQ test.
Yeah.
I can't say that. That's rude.
I need that sign. I need the sign.
Yeah.
Where's my little?
The answer is, it's not your fault.
No,
it's not. It's not your fault. I could make fun of people all day long, and I will, because that's who I am. But
he'll also make fun of himself because he's got a Zyn pouch in his lip right now.
Yeah, because it's like we fall for this. We all fall for.
Yes, it's impossible to live in this world and to not, especially when you're talking about big conglomerates like the medical community, and you have to play the game. And that's what I tell people now. Like when they come to me for advice, is like, you have to play the game. You have to advocate for yourself, but you have to do it in a way to make them think that it's their idea, because that's the only way you're going to get anything done.
Just act like you're dealing with your children.
Exactly.
Just make it their idea.
This is Kristin's propaganda.
Yeah. Don't you want me to have an MRI? Don't you think I should have an MRI? Don't you think the hospital should pay for it? Because, yeah, right. They'll never fall for that one.
No, that's
You're always going to pay. But yeah, that's, we just want people to know that we're not going to sit here and say we've got it all figured out, and we don't ever fall for propaganda. Like, that's not the case.
And in fact, if anybody does say that, then they're lying.
Yeah, it's just not true. There's so much propaganda. How do you not step in cat poop when it's everywhere, right? Every once in a while, you're going to get landmined. It's just going to happen. It's just everywhere. The propaganda is, like we said, it's from Hollywood, it's medical industry, it's the news,
it's education,
it's social media. If you're on social media, you're falling for it hook, line, and sinker all the time.
I hardly ever even get on my Facebook anymore, because it's almost all ads. It's either ads or the groups that I'm part of that I don't really care that much about. That's like, I'll see their stuff every once in a while, but I hardly ever get anything anymore from somebody that is actually just a friend on my friends list.
Yeah. We try our best to do, when we do this show, we obviously also understand that there's ads that pop up, right? And there's a little bit of, for us, like, you could call us propagandists by giving you information that we want you to understand, we want you to follow.
And like going all the way back to the 15th, 16th century, propaganda is not a bad thing. It's not always a bad thing. It wasn't actually intentionally created to be a bad thing until later on. Yeah. But or propagating flowers, propagating shrubs, like all that. Propagating succulents, which it turns out I'm terrible at. I can't do it. Not good. It's not good at all. I had like counters full of succulents and all dead
ones.
I was overwatering. I was underwatering. I just never got it figured out.
It's not my thing.
But propaganda is not always a bad thing. Mm-hmm. But it turns into a bad thing when you can, like Rick said earlier, you can trace it back to who it came from, who started it. And a good way to look at stuff is this book, Propaganda, is very good. He also has another book called The Crystallization of Public Opinion, which is another interesting one about propaganda, that you would think that this kind of stuff would be required reading in schools, because it's fascinating. This guy's mind was just demented,
But it can't be required reading. Because then you would know.
Exactly. And it wouldn't be the whatever minority.
Yeah, you wouldn't be a sheep. You would be.
They don't want participants. They want spectators.
Yeah. I was telling Kristin earlier, there's something to be said about sheeps and wolves, but there's also shepherds, right? There's also people that choose to pass information on, and it's all about intent, right? What's the intent of the person that's passing the information. Because sometimes they get things wrong. Sometimes we might get things wrong. We might tell you guys something and then you fact check and you're like, oh, you guys got that wrong. You guys are dumb. And
in fact, we should probably have a separate podcast that's called Things We Got Wrong.
Yeah,
we can just go
fact check. Because obviously we're going to say things that are probably wrong, or we're going to get things wrong over time. But what's the motive? Are we trying to lead people astray? Are we trying to hurt people,
Right.
versus, a person that's trying to make money and purposely steer you in a direction of laziness or powerlessness or, financial strain, all of those different things. Like those are the things that are actually happening to you.
And sometimes it's really hard to tell the difference because you think, yeah, a good breakfast is a big deal. Yeah, I do think I should have bacon and ham and eggs for breakfast. Yeah.
Well, they told you that fat was terrible for you for forever.
Right.
And they told you that, salt was terrible for you, and all of these different things that they tell you over the years. And
then they end up putting you on a water pill, and turns out the water pill is just a salt pill.
Yeah. And it helps. And you're like, oh, well, I guess the salt wasn't
water
as bad
follows
for me.
salt. So if you're going to take salt, then the water is going to follow that and exit your body when the salt exits your body. It's a crazy.
Don't you go science and me.
I'm just saying.
We're
going to have a separate one on the pharmaceuticals and big pharma and all
I feel like you said that already.
Rick?
It's like we just keep falling back into the pharmaceuticals because we have it on the brain, I think.
Well, that's what I studied.
That's your lane?
That's my lane.
Well, we just wanted to come back and do this episode because we've been busy, but we've also...
we've taken an intentional break.
There's a desire to do the podcast. Don't get me wrong. There is a desire, but it's like, what do we talk about? What is important to talk about? And I think in this day and age where you're just like inundated with information, propaganda, and, just people on the internet trying to be famous or trying to go viral or trying to do all those things. Everybody has a
podcast now. It's like,
yeah, I mean, you could listen.
There's no shortage of places for you guys to get your information from. And we knew that you guys were in good hands with the guests that we've already had on that you're now following. We got all of your messages. We appreciate you guys sending us messages that you missed us, that you were, ready for us to come back. All of that stuff was absolutely amazing. But the bottom line was we didn't really have that much to discuss because we were convicted about just talking to talk.
Yeah.
And we don't want to just talk to talk. We want to talk because there's something that is worth talking and spreading.
Yeah. And I think, we can just pick it up and talk about anything. I mean, we could probably talk for hours about anything, but what's the value? What are you guys getting out of it? Because you're giving your time, and your time is valuable. And so we don't want to just be talkers. Even though that's kind of what a podcast is.
If you've ever met Rick, he's a talker.
I'll talk. Don't get me wrong. I'll talk. But
we'll talk to the guy at the grocery store.
You're going to... Hopefully on this podcast, you'll get some stuff that actually matters, things that matter to your life instead of stuff to just fill your head,
And just finding little ways that you can, like, what do I do? Propaganda is such a big thing. It's such a huge, part of our lives now that what do I do? What can I do? Well, you have control over where you spend your money. You have control over what you eat on. You have control over what kind of soap you buy,
Yeah.
If you can make the soap, if you can buy it at a crafter's market, if you can buy it at the Saturday market, buy stuff that's been locally made. I'm not a big, as you guys probably remember, I'm a big Amazon person, which is, again, something that I've been convicted about. Like, okay, maybe I need to shop more locally. Maybe I need to, have the homemade soaps and stuff like that. My sister she's doing amazing stuff in that regard. She's using some kind of clay to brush her teeth. I mean, it's like crazy.
Weirdo.
She's really getting in there. She's really committed.
But you're learning, we're all learning together that a lot of this stuff that we've been told is junk, like what? Why have we been doing it this way for so long? And the more that we find out, the more that we, start to lose trust in those people that are, that are saying the things that they're saying. And I think the encouragement is that you have a brain. God gave you a mind, a sound mind, and you can use it to, like we talked about before, work backwards, work the problem backwards, figure out who's talking like this. Why are they doing this? Do they have a whole department that's trying to trick me? Yes, Amazon does have a whole department.
Why, yes, they certainly do.
But you have to have your own moral compass. You have to say, what do I believe in? What am I willing to do? And do I want to be part of this matrix, or do I want to do something else? And then,
as much as you can.
Yeah, and that's up to you.
Try to unplug.
And don't ever think that we're coming on here just like, we're judging all of you, because that's not the case. We just want you to be informed. We want you to know that propaganda is a real thing, and it's been happening for a long time, and it's in everything. Literally everything that you can think of, it's in it. Whether it's going to buy a car or, getting insurance. Why do you think they have all those Geico commercials and
no, we're not going to talk about Geico.
All of those different things.
There's got to be a button. We had a fun fact. So here's just a fun story for us, because we haven't really talked about the happenings, the goings-ons. So Rick's been working really hard and got a new engine put in our car, because our children blew the engine in our car, which was fun. We have had 2 cars with blown engines, but
I put a brand new engine in. Okay, we spent a lot of money, got this brand new engine put in. These hands.
Yes, and we were so proud. Like, it was so cool. 10 days. 10 days later, we have a bit of a windstorm here, and a tree fell on it.
Yep.
Yeah, that happened.
I'd like to say that it was a branch, because it kind of was, but it was like a tree-sized branch.
Yeah.
It was massive.
Yeah.
And it smashed it pretty good.
Yeah. So we're waiting on insurance to figure out.
Yeah. So I probably shouldn't have brought that up.
Yeah. Triggered.
But yeah, that's what we're dealing with. But it'll all work out.
It'll all work out.
Because God is good.
It'll be what it'll be.
That's right. But, you guys are...
well, we missed you guys.
Yeah.
We're glad to be back.
You guys are on our mind all the time.
Yep. And we do have stuff that we want to go over and want to talk about, and we're going to put episodes out. I'm a very, we got to put an episode out once a week or every 10 days. We got to have like a schedule, and Rick's kind of like, nah, let's just put one out whenever we have something to say. So I'm not going to say we're going to have episodes every week like we were doing for a long time. But we are going to have episodes, and they're going to be closer together than they have been.
We've got some people that want to come on and have some things to share with you.
Yeah.
And we've always been...
Send us ideas if you have stuff that somebody sent us this propaganda idea a while ago and said, hey, what do you guys think about some of this stuff? And that was what has propelled us to do as much research as we can, and we'll try to get you the information. We want you guys to have the truth but also have the critical thinking to be able to walk it back and say, okay, who sent out this message? Who is this going to benefit?
What's the motive here?
What's the motive?
Be a detective. Be a matrix detective.
Yeah.
You'll figure it out. You guys are smart, so don't let them fool you.
Yeah.
But with that, we're probably going to get rid of this episode. We're going to be done with it. Yeah. I think we're done. I think we did it. I think we propagandized you guys enough for tonight.
We propagated That's So Fringy.
Yeah. We are That's So Fringy podcast, and we are so glad that you took the time to come and hang with us.
Yes.
And we hope that you will come back soon.
Yes.
We'll see you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.